Welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast. I'm your host, James Anderson, and we're brought to you by Pick6, the new fantasy game from DraftKings. Use code RWPICKS for $50 in Pick6 credits with a $5 deposit. My guest tonight, a special guest, Jason DuPont, been playing the NFBC for a long time, big Red Sox fan, and we've hung out in Vegas for NFBC events and stuff, Jason, and we've been on some Zoom calls and stuff, but we haven't exchanged many direct messages. And so when I invited you on, I saw our only other correspondence was about the viability of Dustin Fowler back in 2018. So that was a fun blast from the past. How you doing, man?
That is great, man. No, it's good to chat. And props on you in the main event. We're battling in. Well, not we're battling. You're in first place right now. I have no chance at that. But always good, James. My bar is very high for who I listen to. Not that I'm a know-it-all, but you're on that short list. So great job.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. My bar is very high for who I listen to as well. So
that's good. You might be a little low on a couple of Red Sox on your list, but we can take that offline.
Okay. Yeah. Well, take it offline for sure. So Jason, you've been playing for a long time. I love your history in the NFBC. Can you maybe just give the listeners just kind of a quick sort of breakdown of sort of how long you've been playing, what type of contests you typically play, and that type of thing?
Yeah, so the NFBC started in 2004, and I played in 2005, but in 2004, interestingly enough, I did go to Vegas and do a live event, sort of like a main event. And it was with one of those companies that went belly up. And second year just happened to find the NFBC, and it's been a great marriage since then. So 2005, it's interesting, what league you pick, how you did it. I had a co-manager, one of my good friends, and we did the ultimate draft. So that was our first forte into live drafting. And, it's great to pull up the Rolodex to see what happened during that draft. In the second round, actually, David Ortiz, 347 bombs and 148 RBIs. Also, that team had legends Trot Nixon and Bronson Arroyo, defending champs in 2005. But good times. Ever since then, I've only built on, the games that I play. I'm not a big volume player. I'm primarily a live events. Nobody loves live events more than me. And in particular, I love live auctions and a lot of the high stake events. So, I've been part of going to New York and Vegas for quite a long time. And, that's essentially my portfolio. Also have become a big fan of the gladiator contest. Pretty much all I play. I think that's an undersold contest, just like the live auctions.
So gladiators in the fall and winter, and then auctions in the spring.
Yeah, and I don't take the gladiators too serious, even though I've done relatively well the last 2 years. I don't take it serious, the standings. But to me, there is a science behind how many times you go through that decision-making process. And you can even take that into auctions. How many times you're in a gladiator in round 15 and you need a corner and where you go. You know how many times I've ranked the players in my head. So I think it's fantastic prep for any type of draft. And I diversify. I go boring on those. So I tend to do well. But I don't care either way. And that's a league. If I ever won an overall, I would not boast about it. It's a cool thing, but obviously a lot of luck factor, but it's worth $50 for prep.
Yeah, no doubt. Would you even know if you won an overall in a gladiator until the end of the season? Or are you checking a little?
No, I'm the worst guy. I make this game so unfun. I mean, I'm looking at next week's lineups rather than live scoring for my biggest teams always. So I need to appreciate it more. So gladiators, I hide right away. Once in a while, I'll go into just the overall and scan and take a look. I tell you what no one is talking about, and I don't want to jinx the poor guy. This is why no one should ever complain about gladiators. The guy in number 1 overall, Randy Haynes, has Strider. Think about that. I mean, that's awesome, but it just goes to show you, every team can handle injuries, because I didn't have Strider in a fab league, but I feel for those who do. I cannot recall a more insurmountable injury playing this game where you put all the chips and paid, number 1 price,
right,
and knowing what the pool looks like. So anyone who's cashing or coming close to the money with Strider deserves a big pat on the back.
Yeah, I mean, winning an overall contest with Strider as your presumably your first pick and in your lineup all season. I mean, that'd be a crazy feat.
Yeah, and in the 2 short years, I have found if you're going to suffer injuries, you definitely want it on the pitching side, of course. Sometimes it actually helps out the ratios, not for a guy like Strider.
Right.
Offensively, it's, insurmountable with the 4 categories.
I suppose I suppose for a gladiator, like the odds of you even having 7 pitchers stay healthy all season are probably not that great anyway. So if you hit on the other ones, I could see that. So yeah, live auctions. I've never gotten to be in a live auction with you, unfortunately. Someday, and hopefully someday soon. But do you got any good stories from like the live auctions that you've been in?
Yeah, again, no one has more fun in those auctions. I play a lot of mental games, not like Ariel Cohen. I've heard his stories, but just this year, there's always anticipation of especially the first auction. I have patience, but I always know there's one player I'm going to get, and I'm going to get him. I'm not going to lose him. And if it comes down to it, I'm going to get very aggressive to get him. And in the past, it's not always a Red Sox player, believe it or not, but this one happens to be. And I was very, very confident. So Friday night ultimate auction, first auction. I mean, literally, I've been thinking about this auction for 6 months on the plane coming in mentally, this auction. And it just takes the stress off if I get this player early. Otherwise, I'm going to get him the next day, the day after, and I have limits. So it was Cassis, and not a big surprise. I think the room sort of expects me to be active, and I have limits, but I thought it was an easy win. So I think his AAV was about $14. And yeah, I'll go a couple dollars higher. Otherwise, I'll get him tomorrow and the day after and the day after. So, Chris Hill, partner of Nick Cassavetes, he obviously liked them. I think, 8, 9, 10. So all of a sudden I just stand up and start yelling. And usually in the past, when I've done that, I've always won the bids or had $1 up. So it was 10, 11, 12. And all of a sudden he yells $20. I'm standing up, completely neutered. I just sat down and I wanted to give the guy a standing O. I mean, he totally embarrassed me. It was his guy, clearly not mine. And he just paid why go up by $1 when you can go up by 7? So, unfortunately, he missed 98 games. He later dropped him. I picked him up, of course. So he's back home. But yeah, it was just a lot of fun. And there's always, a battle in every auction, or, great personalities that are just a lot of fun. Again, I can't recommend them enough. And I think for a lot of the better players, you're crazy just sticking to the snake drafts. If you think of a snake draft, it helps the bad players, the ADP. The ADP has gotten so incredibly good that you could actually just sort of follow ADP, pay attention to who other good players take, and build a reasonably good team. In auctions, it doesn't happen. You end the draft and people are so unbalanced, overweight. There's a couple teams that feel screwed. Everyone feels short in an area. So for the better players, you can definitely take advantage. And the other myth I always hear is people feel like they need training wheels with all these contests. Oh, before I do a main event, I'm going to do a qualifier. Before I do this. Now, financially, I totally get it if that's your way, but don't feel intimidated entering a live auction if you've never done a live auction. I mean, there was a guy, the first live auction he did, little known player, not one of the good players at all, Phil Dussault. He won an overall his first auction. So if he can do it, you can do it. Phil's obviously one of the handful of best players, but I just hear a lot of people. I'll get to the online auctions, and if you're going live and you're going Vegas, it's easier than the overall main event. Just look at the math. And you have to do one. Everybody that I hear does them. It's the greatest experience they've had, yet the contest doesn't grow. So I don't understand that part. I actually, this year, I hope I stick to my word. I plan to do 100% auctions, and that's it for Fab Leagues. My last snake draft I set the draft for is the meatball draft, as far as I'm concerned. So we'll see if I can stick to that.
Well, yeah, I would have done my first live auction this year, but I had just like a weird, hectic schedule that week. I had to get to New Orleans for a wedding, and the contests, there wasn't a good one when it would have fit. But I'm definitely doing a live one this year. Was obviously hoping to be in the Champions League auction, but that's not going to happen. So, and then Olax, and I'm going to try to grow that the auction stuff too this offseason. I'm going to try to have more auction sort of themed strategy pods, and just even kind of like looking at maybe how AAVs are shifting from month to month, that type of thing. So I'm right there with you. It's definitely not because I'm scared. I mean, it's some of the buy-ins are up there and all that, but I'm totally with you on that, and hopefully we can grow that auction game up here.
No, and by the way, you get a mulligan, because when I heard you had to leave Vegas, I gave you a hard time, as I do to everyone that I'm friendly with. And, one of your best friends was getting married. So you have a mulligan there. While we're talking live auctions, I want to give a shout out and also put some pressure on this guy. Quiet Assassin, the player that no one talks to, Hall of Famer Sean Johnson, is currently leading the diamond auction. And again, when I say leading the auction, I'm not looking at it right now. He's been in the 136, 7, 8, 140 point vicinity. And if he pulls it off, it will be 6 out of 8 years. 6 out of 8 years, the diamond auction. So what a beast. And he's worth the price of admission to watch what he does as well. So, great guy, great player, and incredibly impressive. Yeah,
no doubt about that. I think I saw him give a quick speech a couple of years ago. Got to get him on the pod though. So Jason, before we head to a break, you're dominating in terms of just where you and Steve Weimer are in the Too Early Meatball auction from Meatball DC from last year. And so you had one of the earlier picks in terms of KDS. And you chose pick 14 for the Too Early Meatball draft. I didn't give like a full breakdown of it, but I know it's been talked about on a bunch of podcasts already this week. But the first high stakes draft of the year that Jason and I both were in a week ago tonight, and you chose pick 14 in that draft, and you could have had pretty much anywhere other than one. So what kind of went into that idea?
Yeah, multiple reasons, and obviously realized that, the 15 of us are animals in the draft, but I don't think we're prepared and prepped. There's no ADP. Makes it a ton of fun, but it is the wild, wild west. So I was hoping to catch 2 falling stars. Recency bias. I was thinking of, the Acuñas, Tatis, J-Rod, Tucker, whoever falls, grab 2 of them. But more important than that, it's the idea that when we come out of the chute in October and finish the draft, I have the number 2 pick. And I remember last year, there's a lot that changes in these next 3 months. There'll be some significant closers that are available there with solidified jobs. There might be a 5th, 6th round, 7th round pick available at that second pick. So I think that's a big advantage. I would have taken pick 1 last, actually, just because of that dynamic. But the other one, back to my earlier point, is I have time to prep, meaning I did do a little research a couple of days before with a small list. But during my picks, I was looking up guys and saying, wow, Gausman's K rate is terrible. I'm not taking him. Players you don't own this year, those are the toughest ones right now. You do an evaluation after the season, but if I don't own you and you're not available as a fab guy, I'm not looking into you. So for those 3 reasons, I took 14. And also, 14 versus 15, it's very simple, just being strategic to your right. And I didn't let her know during the draft, but there was twice that Jenny did something that I realized what to do. She felt pain when a pitcher went, and I knew I got to take a pitcher before her. And there was an outfielder. And when I took the outfielder, she cringed because she wanted that outfielder. So if I'm near you, I'm listening.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely all makes sense. You've got a really awesome roster, a lot of star power. I'll share that board here when we get back. I was actually, part of me was thinking, because I was picking 4th. And like initially when I picked the 4 spot, I thought there was a chance Corbin Carroll might make it back to me in the 2nd round. And then he kind of kept hitting. So I knew he wasn't making it back. And then I was like, man, did Jason do this to get Corbin Carroll? But you end up getting Tatis and Alvarez. So pretty nice. Yeah. Falling stars. Good way to put that. And
yeah, and if I'm honest, not that I didn't like the Alvarez pick, but I was kind of hoping for another guy to drop to me, a J. Rod Tatis or, the Acuna. I kind of felt where Alvarez went, not that it's, I know this will solidify by March, but it felt kind of the next 10 picks, it was similar to me. So, a little bummed out about that, but, I think Alvarez hasn't had his best year yet. So.
Well, if you like videos like this one, please consider subscribing and hammering that like button. And Jason said that if there's 1,000 likes on this YouTube video, he'll come back on again. So definitely hammer that like button if you're watching. Did you ever play that over-under game with your friends? Think I can eat that slice of pizza in under 30 seconds, or no, it'll take you over a minute to down that 2-liter. If you have, then you're going to love Pick 6, the new fantasy game from DraftKings. Here's how to play during baseball season. Pick between 2 and 6 players and choose if they'll have more or less of a stat like runs, hits, strikeouts, and more. Track your picks and play against others for a shot to win huge cash prizes. That's all there is to it. Download the new DraftKings Pick 6 app and use code RWPICKS. New customers play $5 and get 50 in Pick 6 credits. That's code RWPICKS for new customers to play $5 and get 50 in Pick 6 credits. Only on DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours. One per new customer, non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits expire in 6 months. Limited time offer. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 18 plus in most eligible states. Not available in all states, including New York and Connecticut. Eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos. All right, guys, you want to get an extra $500? Go to bluewirepods.com/survey and complete the Blue Wire audience survey about you and your podcast listening habits for a chance to win a $500 gift card. This survey will help create a better advertising experience for audiences and in turn help this show. That's bluewirepods.com/survey, where all you have to do is answer some simple questions for a chance to win $500. Make sure to read the full terms and disclaimer, plus complete the survey for a chance to win. bluewirepods.com/survey. All right, Jason. So we are back, and I'm going to share that draft board here. It was kind of just crazy watching where just some of these new prices are on these guys. As you said, you were hoping for some falling stars at 14. You got Fernando Tatis, and then you got Yordan Alvarez, and then you got Michael Harris in the 4th, who was going like mid-second in some drafts this year, and Blake Snell, Grayson Rodriguez, Freddie Peralta. I was trying to think of how to discuss the draft. I mean, you can kind of take it anywhere you want, but one guy I called out when it happened, Jackson Churio went in the middle of the 3rd round to Dan Kenyon, and I thought that there was a chance that might end up being his max pick in DC's, which would be pick 36, I guess. Did you see any players who may have gone for their max or their min in this draft? And feel free to call people out by name if you want.
Yeah, no, I'm going to call them all out. Let's go with the good ones. I agree with you. And these all 3 have a common, they're all rookies. Churio, Jackson Merrill, and Spencer Schwellenbach. I think all of them, we may potentially have maxes. Looking back, I think they all went in excellent places. And there's going to be tons of hype on those 3. The picks I don't like, and I will readily admit, I'm probably more risk adverse than most players. Part of that is the types of leagues I do, the stakes. So understand my perspective. But all of these pitchers, I cringed when I heard them. Felix Bautista, McClanahan, Alcantara, Woodruff, and Strider. It's just not my style. So many injured guys that you can take, pick up, grab throughout the year. I know this is a DC league, but yeah, I can't do the injured pitchers. It's one thing if you come back this year and you throw a couple games, like DeGrom. I can see merit in that. But if you don't pitch this regular season, I'm just not going to take a chance in the first 11 rounds on you.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, yeah. So Churio went in the 3rd. Jackson Merrill goes at pick 49, I think, to Ryan Venancio. I agree. That's a really good pick. Jackson Merrill. I would guess Jackson Merrill's kind of like a 3rd rounder, and Jackson Churio's a 2nd rounder for most of the winter. And you said Schwellenbach with the Atlanta. He goes in the 10th round to Dom. I agree that was a good pick too. I mean, with Schwellenbach, I guess it's tough to say for sure, but like, yeah, I mean, if he stays healthy and like the projections come out and like him, he's going to go quite a bit higher. I mean, Merrill, how is Churio like a clear like round ahead of Merrill to you, or do you think those guys are going to get kind of close in terms of ADP?
I'd have it a clear round apart.
Yeah.
You know, I think Churio has that top 5 overall type game to him, and I think he's really safe for how young he is, which is wild at that age. So yeah, and I kind of see him having the same market as Michael Harris had this year, right? Where you know, some people at the back end, the thinking early on, but you know, that will be the max.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, Merrill just another guy with a really high floor, I think, for how young he is. And you know, Shane McClanahan, I think Zach kind of knew that he would probably want to have that one back after we talked it out a little bit on the Zoom. Just it's tough when it's the second time for a guy. It's his second time again. Felix Bautista, I mean, you know, it would be great if he could come back and just give everyone like a couple innings before the offseason, but you're going to just have to draft him blind. And, you know, you got Kenley Jansen in the 11th round, and I've been thinking a little bit since the draft, like, would I rather take Robert Suarez in the 4th round or Kenley Jansen in the 11th round? I think I'd flip those. And I could have taken Kenley because I was picking ahead of you in the 11th round.
You know what's interesting on Kenley? That was my absolute favorite pick, and it's not a homer. He's going to be a free agent, but there's no doubt he's the closer next year. You don't mess around with Kenley, and he's been really, really good this year under the hood. And he's one of those guys that has just always been good, never had a bad year. So I think that's an incredible pick. And, you know, that's one of those, if, you know, he signs in the offseason, it's solidified that he goes much higher. But, you know, looking back at this board, the way I liked a lot of the closer deals later, and coming out of the chute when we start in 12, there's a couple names that I think might go early as well. So yeah, I can see where you'd have some regret with Suarez, but obviously, you know, you didn't know the board at that point would work out that way.
No, and I was probably a little too rigid with like I drew the line at closers I was willing to take that night above Kenley, but I don't think I spent enough time like thinking about it. And yeah, I mean, it's just a 7-round difference. You know, where I took Robert Suarez, I could have taken an SP1 or like at least an SP2. You know, just lots of different ways to go there. I thought Dan Kenyon had a crazy good value on Matt Olson, like late 4th round. There was a scenario where I would have taken Matt Olson in the 3rd round where I took William Contreras, and the board just didn't break that way. But yeah, I mean, it's just such a fun board to look back at. Yeah, I mean, McClanahan, I don't think he's. I think that'll end up being kind of a min pick. Woodruff, again, I think that's probably a min pick too. And I think Woodruff's good enough where, like, if Woodruff was coming back from the same thing as Sandy Alcantara, like first Tommy John surgery, I think I'd be totally fine taking Woodruff where he went. But it's just kind of a more complicated injury with the shoulder and just more uncertainty there, I think, with him than just the typical random pitcher injury. So, yeah, I agree with that. And then where did Strider go again? Just since you mentioned him, I can't remember.
Yeah.
Oh, he went 7th round to Ryan Roof. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess it's, you know, we're going to probably get a bunch of reports throughout the winter about Strider feels great and he's thinking he's going to be back by May and stuff like that. That one, I'm not sure. I think Strider in the 7th might not end up being a min or a max or a min pick, just because I think there is sort of that aggressiveness to kind of chase elite ace upside that people have. And with it being a DC, people feel better about not using him for the first 6 weeks or so. But I'm with you. I wasn't there is a price I would have taken Felix Bautista. I probably would have actually taken Bautista if he'd come back to me in the fourth there, knowing the risk involved, and just kind of going after that potential closer one. But yeah, it's a fun board.
Yeah, it's a loaded board too, because I mean, we see these guys as all being healthy, right? That's where it just feels so deep with the outfielders, the pitchers available, the closers, but it's going to be decimated. This talent pool won't exist in March, of course.
And with Grayson Rodriguez, who you took, like, just what's your rationale for not being as worried about him as with some of these other guys?
Well, the current injury, which is the only one I'm really going to focus on, is a lat strain. So that just doesn't concern me. And yeah, it's just the idea that he's this is a DC, can't mess around with wins. He's on a good team, ridiculous ballpark. I can't stand left field, but it's nice for pitchers. Way to ruin a beautiful ballpark. So yeah, no. And I kind of think talent wise, like Grayson is very similar to the late third, fourth, fifth round picks. So I thought it was kind of a good price there. Same with Freddie Peralta.
Yeah. I mean, that's an awesome price on Freddie. I mean, Snell, Freddie, Grayson. I mean, you could even probably just take one of those three, not helping you a ton next year, and you'll probably be doing okay.
Probably will be Snell, knowing his Jekyll and Hyde. That's the only one I regret a little bit. I mean, under the hood, it's electric, it's monster upside, but for the whole idea of opt out, he's a free agent. That just doesn't usually sit well with aces. Corbin Burns, I would want nothing to do with, being a free agent as well. Same concept. So that's the only risk with Snell.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I was not taking Burns in this just because I don't know where he's going to end up, and I also just don't. I'm with you on that. I don't like buying an ace at ace prices after he signs a gigantic deal. So honestly, like I was just very relaxed for the first 19 picks or so. Like nothing happened that surprised me at all, really, in the first 19 picks. And then Zach Waxman took Jarren Duran, 20th overall. And obviously what he's done this year is deserving of going in the second round. I think, you can't really point to too much under the hood that is, ton of regression coming necessarily. But at the same time, I got alarm bells going off in my head that this is just obviously a career year for Duran. Everything went right. Second round is just kind of like, it's almost sort of like treating him like he was just a blue chip prospect who made good on being a blue chip prospect. So what say you about Jarren Duran in the second round, or should I find out his price in Vegas?
Yeah, no, I was letting other people set the prices here. As I told you, the real price will happen in Vegas, but obviously I had no problem with it. To me, it's one of the most amazing comeback stories in baseball to think 3-4 years ago. I mean, he was close to the Bobby Dahlbeck route. Everything was a mess. The defense was worse than the offense. And why I don't think it's a bad pick in the second round is this breakout started last year. I mean, he had a 2-month window, June, July, a little bit of August, where he was lights out all around. And it's just the changes. I mean, he's a top percentile defender, runner, hitter. This leg kick he's added, the power, all field approach. I mean, I know we like looking under the hood. It looks amazing. The eyeball stuff even looks better. He should be getting a lot more press for MVP candidate. And he plays every single day, of course. I'll tell you the one worry in the offseason, which ended up being a nothing, but I had slight concerns on him, was just the comments about I'm going to have to deal with the toe for the rest of my career. Judge made similar comments as well, but that worried me a little bit, when your calling card is your legs. But obviously there's been zero toe news, and the guy's just an absolute beast. And I think he's going to move up in the back of that first round.
Wow. So 130 games for Duran, 20 homers, 32 steals, 93 runs, 294 average, hit 295 last year. Cut the strikeout rate from 25% to 22%, up the walks from 6.5% to 8%. As you said, he was a negative defender every year until this year, and now he's up to 6.5 wins above replacement. Just really crazy. And,
yeah, number 2 behind Varsho, I believe. Literally you remember that the Grand Slam, Eovaldi, he lost the ball. It's really wild. But like I said, it's last year. If it wasn't for the toe injury, he had a 2-month window where he was very close to this player. I think what solidified more this year is the power is real. And I think he could bump that up to closer to 30 home runs. So I think that's the next level.
What scared me for this year with Duran, I have Duran on a couple of draft and holds, but I didn't know if the new regime was going to play him if he was the same defender he'd been before this year, or like play him every day like he is. And so I just wasn't sure, like, when you have a new front office coming in, like which guys are they going to prioritize? But that was obviously incorrect because he was a very good player. And I just didn't, he was not a part of my second round prep. Just because it was kind of like a reverse doing the like regression build, like staying away from like potential career year guys. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Are there few enough players for him to get into the first round? I mean, I guess, you could definitely make a case for him over like Lindor, J-Rod. I mean, would you put a price on Duran like where you would on Acuna and Tatis come March? Or is that classified info?
Yeah, no, I mean, again, I see one guy on the rise and other guys, there might be something there. So, and I think the runs could be really prolific.
Yeah.
Red Sox offense is really good already. It's going to be absolutely elite next year when all the pieces are there. So, I look at him as a guy who could lead American League in runs, 20 plus homers, 30 plus stolen bases. And just the counting stats are very juicy. I mean, if you're going to point to anything, he's obviously much better versus righties than lefties, but he's not terrible versus lefties, and he's gotten better throughout the year. So, yeah, exciting player, but very, very confident in him going forward.
Well, that's good to hear. And I mean, the Red Sox have a ton of good young outfielders. If we're counting Duran as young, he's about to turn 28, but Cedar Rafaela, Wilyer Abreu, Roman Anthony. I mean, I think Roman Anthony is absolutely the real deal. And it's just kind of a question of how do they make all those pieces fit, because I think Anthony to me is going to clearly look ready in spring training next year. I don't think he's going to make the team out of spring training, but you got those 4 guys. You got Yoshida clogging up the DH spot. How do you, like, if you kind of put your fan / GM cap on, how do you make all the pieces fit there?
Yeah. And first, you're the prospect guy, but in my lifetime, this is the greatest prospect list the Red Sox have ever had. Usually it's one guy you're hanging your hat on, but they have truly elite blue chip guys right now. And, in other years, it's players are far away. They have this crew at Worcester, 4 guys. We know all about them that are very close to being called up. But even after them, there's a whole layer of guys in the lower A that look very, very good. So very exciting. And, the way I see this playing out, and I think in a perfect world, Breslow wanted this to happen, but it didn't, is you're going to have to cash in some of these for a trade that's uncomfortable. On a bigger scale, the Nick York for Quinn Priester types. I think of the past Red Sox, how they've acquired pitchers, the Pedro trade, the Beckett trade, the Sale trade. They're going to have to pick a couple of these kids and put them together and make a trade. Again, I love the lineup that's stacked. It's very imbalanced, lefty heavy, of course.
Mm-hmm.
you hit the nail on the head. I love the Yoshida bat, but that just changes everything, having him there. So, I know he wouldn't be the most appetizing player to move. I don't think the contract's horrendous, 3 times 18, but I just see a trade being made for pitching. They're going to add 2 starting pitchers, good ones. And I don't think you can just write a check for both of them. I think you're going to have to trade for one. Otherwise, I mean, I'm totally comfortable babying these guys and not rushing them. It's a good problem to have. Roman Anthony is going to be 20 on opening day next year. But I'm not going to be surprised if one of these guys makes the roster, even like a Christian Campbell. I mean, the Ceddanne Rafaela, that was not likely 3 months before the season started. I know you're a big fan. So they have proven that they will call guys up, and they've proven that they want to sign some of these guys and extend them. So, yeah, I think it's a trade. I'm not saying it's Roman Anthony. I mean, it could be those lower guys, the Cespedes, Arias, Blyce types, but I think there's a big trade coming. And but Roman Anthony, I don't think we're going to be too far from Gunnar Henderson type numbers when that baby's hatched.
Oh man,
think big.
Think big. Yeah, I mean, my like offensive ceiling comp on Roman Anthony is sort of like the really, really good version of Christian Yelich. Whatever was happening those 2 years where he was just a mega power hitter. But yeah, I mean, they're definitely not trading Roman Anthony. Like I feel like he's the least. I honestly think you probably disagree. I think they'd be more likely to trade Jarren Duran for an ace than to trade Roman Anthony this offseason.
No, I agree with that. These guys are all about player control. Even though they still have 4 years on Duran, Anthony's a more valuable asset to them. I would agree with that.
Do you think Wilyer Abreu is someone that we can just assume will kind of reprise his role from this year?
Cannot trade that guy. He is such a stud. Absolute monster. Game changer, right field. I mean, his defense is absolutely epic. And I see him getting better. I think he's going to develop versus lefties. Cora kind of alluded to a couple months ago, the Cassis and Devers build up where, you kind of you weave him in a little bit. He hasn't done that really with Abreu, to be fair. But I just don't think he's moving at all. Thank you, Chaim Bloom.
Yeah, that was a
shout out, Chaim Bloom.
Awesome trade. Got Abreu and then Manuel Valdez, but mostly Abreu for 2 months of Christian Vasquez.
Years. And they won a World Series with Vasquez, so I guess they would say it was fine with them. But I know there's a lot of Red Sox haters and people like myself bring that on. But the idea that the last 2 years, their 132nd pick last year, Christian Campbell, and the prior year, number 79, Roman Anthony. I mean, again, I'm not necessarily giving the GM credit. I know it's the scouting department, but pick 132 last year, slot price, and this guy might be the best of all of them, or arguably.
I know. Okay, you want to talk about Christian Campbell? I get it.
Barry Bonds, as they call him.
You've mentioned him in passing multiple times without a question being asked about him. So we'll talk about him. So he's he started the year at high A, and he had 172 WRC plus there, and then he went up to double A, had a 195 WRC plus there, and then now he's at triple A, and it's 6 games, but he's hitting 333, 400, 704, 3 homers in 6 games. This is kind of just something else. I got to update my prospect rankings in less than a week, early next week. And I just don't know where to put this guy. I guess number 1?
Higher. Just go higher. We're making progress. No, I think, you've seen him obviously launch this year. He'll be, not that it's a big award, but he'll be the minor league player of the year, no doubt. And the fact that he's not challenged and just continually getting better. And I just love his videos. You've probably seen his swing, and they show the Hunter Pence kind of side by side.
Yeah, it's a weird swing. Yeah,
it is an absolute whip, but it's one of those freakish abilities. It just works for him, and perhaps that's why he slipped to where he did. He has an unorthodox swing that people didn't think that would work. But Yeah, very exciting. And I go back, of course, to Anthony, who you love. I mean, that was the number 79 pick the year before. So they've been doing a great job drafting. I know the pitchers have to obviously build up and catch up to the hitter side, but very exciting.
So are you just kind of sharpieing in Christian Campbell as the second baseman of the future, or do you see him fitting in another spot?
Yeah, it's difficult. Right now he's played most games at short, followed by second, followed by outfield. But part of that right now is like Grissom's at second base. So yeah, I think second base. I think they're going to try to wedge him in there, even if outfield's the best spot. Otherwise they're, again, not that I think he's the prospect that they trade. Otherwise, they did a heck of a job of building him up and having him play multiple positions this year. But part of me wants them to keep him.
Yeah, so I mean, I think Campbell, it's easy to just see any team eventually, whenever they think Campbell's ready, they go with Campbell over David Hamilton, right? Like David Hamilton's just sort of a really nice utility player who's done well in his time, but isn't going to stand in the way of Christian Campbell. But for shortstop, you have Trevor Story, you have Marcelo Mayer, who's on the IL again. Like, is there any chance Cedar Rafael is playing a bunch of short next year? Or is that just going to be Trevor Story until Trevor Story breaks and then they go to Mayer?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a Story. I mean, for what he's been through last several years, to keep moving him around. And he looked, I know it was for a split second, but he looked like a game changer defensively. Things went off the rails when he got hurt. He's what they need. He solidifies the infield defense. He gives them right-handed power. So I'm riding him out there. And, as much as I love Marcelo Mayer, I mean, he continues to get hurt. I don't think anything sounds incredibly scary, but I'm completely fine with him being the last of these big four to come up and see it play out. With that being said, I think Cora absolutely loves, as I would, kind of playing a video game with this roster. He's never had more flexibility with what he can do, have the short bench, the extra pitchers. So I think Cedar will continue to move. Why wouldn't you? You're still going to have an excess of outfielders next year, even if you do unload someone.
How's Cedon's infield defense? Because I've seen some highlights where he, tries to make too big a play and just doesn't complete it, that type of thing. But like, I know he's just a wizard in center field, but how's his shortstop defense overall?
I'll tell you, if these defensive statistics didn't exist, I would think he's very, very good. He gets to balls and is so athletic that other shortstops don't. So we'll just start there. Where he loses value, it's his arm angle when he's throwing the ball from second to first. Sometimes it's a little bit high. But, Cora always brings it up. He's not making excuses. This guy is doing something historic. Center field short. He never has a run at either position. I think if you let him run at short for a year, he'd literally win a Gold Glove. He's that good. But, everyone, including Cora, prefers him in center field as well as I do. But I think he's just fine at short. I mean, you're talking about you moving a guy in for 3 innings and the ball's a little bit high type issues. It's one of them with those defensive stats. I know there's a couple important MLB statisticians that love ripping Cedar because of that. And I don't think they're watching the games like I am. I really don't.
What do you think his sort of peak Cedar fantasy line, what does that look like?
25 type numbers. I mean, I think he's going to pull a lot of home runs and, massive improvements the last couple of years. Obviously, he has tons of work with chasing and swinging at balls. But even this year, kind of month over month, you can see him growing. So that's one of those guys, growth is not linear type examples there. I don't think he's ever going to be an OBP guy taking walks. We don't need that, right? I mean, the power, speed, and the defense should be there.
All right. So, we've got this amazing Red Sox farm system. Let's talk about the rest of the division, and we can kind of work in descending order from the standings. So New York Yankees, what do you think the future looks like for the New York Yankees?
Yeah, so the future is going to look a lot worse than the current year. Again, where I'm coming with this, but the future, when I say the next 5 years, this roster, it's very old. It's only going to get worse. Rodon, 4 more years. Yankees would walk from that today if they could. Garrett Cole, 4 more years. Yankees would love to walk from that if they could. Not the same Cole. Stanton, my favorite, 3 more years. Yankees would walk from that if they could. DJ LeMahieu, hysterical, 2 more years. They can't keep him 2 more years. And I know it's fun and balloons right now. Yankee fans seem to love regular season meaningless records more than playoff runs. Judge has 7 more years. Hey, it's worked out fantastic to get your regular season lapel for home run champion. But I still have as many World Series appearances as him, and the 7 years aren't going to go well. So I think the next 5 years are going to be a dark time for the Yankees. And what's different now about the Yankees is they do have limits, just like the Red Sox do. Maybe the Red Sox have more limits. The old Yankees would buy their way out of this. I think Soto is going to be a New York Met also. And I think the Yankees should let Soto go. And I know that sounds crazy. If they sign Soto, the rest of the roster is going to be absolute trash. They have a lot of holes to replace, a lot of players. So that's my take on the Yankees. And also their farm system apparently had a very bad year and went backwards. Let's remind everybody of that. Not saying it's the worst farm system, but when you're bragging about Spencer Jones with his 38% K rate as being the savior, you're having a lot of trouble. He's not sniffing the Red Sox top 10 list. So that's the Yankees in a nutshell. I wish I could be more positive, but I really can't. The roster, this is a young man's game. It's an athletic game. I have no fear of this team. Next, you want to go?
Well, Baltimore? Just quickly, are you saying the game's passed DJ LeMahieu by?
Games passed him by about 4 years ago, but he's just hanging out. Yeah, that was one of those when Cashman signed him, 6 years, like 90, laughing out loud. When Cashman makes that type of move, you just know it right away. I don't play Monday morning quarterback. I call it then.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what happened there. So Orioles. So the Yankees do not have a bright future. What about the Orioles?
So Orioles have massive losses coming their way. Corbin Burns and Santander. I think we're underplaying that, especially Santander. I know they have new ownership, but let's not be super confident that it's going to be Steve Cohen coming in. And the farm system, a lot of the great farm system, one of the best ones we've seen in a long time. A lot of those guys graduated as well. So I think they're a good team. I think they'll be in the playoff hunt the next couple of years. But I think they have a lot of work. I think a year ago, a lot of optimism with Baltimore. But, I mean, obviously, I'm not going to go by the last 2 months necessarily. But, there's holes on that team, and I know they've suffered injuries. So I'm kind of feeling lukewarm on Baltimore. But I don't think they get better because the Burns and Santander departures.
I wish so much that they had not traded for Trevor Rogers, because then I wouldn't have used him a couple more times in fantasy lineups this year on my DC teams, because I had just been not using Trevor Rogers, and then the Orioles acquired him, and I was like, all right, plug him in, and nope. So he's out of the rotation, and Connor Norby looks pretty good, but yeah. Okay, so I guess we've talked about the Red Sox. What about the Rays?
So positive comments here. I think the Rays are going to be on the way up next year. This is a quick bounce back. It's funny. I was looking at their roster. I mean, Erasmo Ramirez, I think, is the only guy they have leaving free agency. If he doesn't get cut tomorrow, all the pitchers they're getting back. They're the only team that can talk farm systems with me, as far as I'm concerned. Tampa and Boston, probably the best two. Definitely the best two in the American League East. So, yeah, I think Tampa's right back in the playoffs next year. Always coming a little bit short and always getting rid of their best player 2 years before. But they're tough.
Yeah, I mean, already I would recommend betting the over on Rays wins. That's always a moneymaker usually. Probably wasn't this year, but it'll be even lower. The over-under will be lower because of this year. So agree with that. I just looked at their farm compared to the Red Sox farm. I mean, the crazy thing about your guys' farm is that it's the top 7 to 8 prospects are all position players to me. But it's just such a loaded group of position players. Really, really impressive. All right. How about the Jays?
Yeah, I mean, the Jays, they're going to have a rough time of it. This Bichette Vlad era not ending well. I mean, good luck trading Bichette with 1 year of control. I mean, what are they really going to even get for him? I mean, the pitching, no one's going to be afraid of the Berrioses and the Bassetts another year from now. So I like some of the players that they're playing now. I think they're smart. Barger and Spencer Horwitz and Clement. But no,
Will Wagner's looking pretty good.
Yep, he hit a dong last night. Yeah, no, so I think they kind of go to a 70 to 75 win team next year. And to be quite honest, in this division, you should rip the Band-Aid off at some points and not try to win next year. If I'm them, I'm trading Vlad or I'm extending them, and it's one or the other because I don't think they're winning in 2 years. They fell far behind.
Right. Yeah, I think what they're doing is very sort of AL Central in terms of the build and the strategy. It doesn't seem like it's going to be very competitive with the rest of the division. So, yeah, I mean, the Bichette this season, I mean, I'm sure they would have probably looked to trade him if he'd been playing well and healthy. And then I don't know, I guess with Vlad, I don't even know what the market would be like for a first baseman with like the best first baseman in baseball with team control. Like, I don't even know what that gets you in prospects.
Yeah, well, if you look at I know it's not apples to apples, but the Matt Olson contract, the Freeman contract, yeah, they're not that high as their counterparts for how great they are. Vlad's different. He's younger, arguably better. But yeah, I agree. I think a lot of teams are going to look at him the same way. To me, the Alonso free agency is going to be telling. Not that Vlad is not worth more than Alonso, but I think Alonso's going to not be thrilled about how it works out for him as well. So if I'm the Jays, I'm trading him. Like I said, I know the guy's a absolute stud, but I just think they need a lot of pieces, and probably also it's not going to end well, which I would say that for most of these guys. I know it's still worthwhile for the team, but Jays, some aspects I think play with limits as well.
So what do you want in terms of pitchers that you want the Red Sox to go after? Have you thought about that at all?
You're saying specifics. I can't get it. No, I kind of believe in their philosophy. I don't want a rental pitcher, number one. I know it costs more, but a cost control guy that has 2-3 years of control. I can't name those right now. And last year, Breslow wanted that and couldn't get it. But those trades are getting harder and harder to make, unfortunately. But that's what I want. And then, the time is now to write a check for a starting pitcher. I do not want a Corbin Burns. I think that's going to end horrible. And if you look at the sweet spot this year, it's funny. Everybody wanted, I know Red Sox fans, Yamamoto, Montgomery, or Snell. Snell was never coming to the East Coast. Those would have been disasters. And it was these 1 year, 2 year deals that were sweet spots. The Lugos, the Wakas, the Severinos, the Manayas. Maybe that would have been Lucas Giolito, 2 year deal, of course. But yeah, I think you got to be creative. I hate the idea of buying an ace, a 30-year-old for 7-8 years. It's not my money, but it affects the roster later on. That's the point, right?
I think my most rostered Red Sox starting pitcher this year is probably Lucas Giolito from like 4 or 5 super early DCs I did where I was loading up on him. So,
yeah, that was a bummer. I really thought with Breslow and Bailey and Willard that, and he seems like a real freak student of the game. Bummer.
Well, he'll be back in 2025. Jason, you got anything else you want to mention before we wrap up here?
No. Besides, draft room will be open in October. Sign up, sign early, Gladiators in particular, and live drafts. We're going to be back in Vegas. Greg will be announcing the hotel very shortly. Don't be afraid of league mates. Wait until the end, dropping out of leagues. We know who you are. Just join. Step up to the plate.
Yeah.
That's my message.
That's a really good message. There's nothing, just join the league that makes the most sense. Stop looking at who's in what league and jumping around. I agree with that.
People overthink it so much. It's just like when you draft a team and you walk out, this is my best team, and it isn't. It's the same thing. You know, some of the hardest leagues I've been in, the drafts felt easy. Whether it ended like that or not, whether the stakes were higher or lower, we overthink it because if one guy's a bad player, you're targeting that league. And you never know the player whose name, you know, doesn't necessarily show up.
So the main event that we're both in that I'm doing well in, I had that originally as my CLQ main event, and then I switched it when I saw that like you and Posma and Rob were all going to be in it. And it's just craven stuff, really, really embarrassing stuff. Wish I could take that back.
Yeah, I'll give you, again, you get a mulligan on that. You didn't back out of the league, and yeah, you had multiple choices. So, you know, you're a good guy. I'm going to let you slide on that one.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. Thank you, Jason DuPont. The podcast is brought to you by Pick6, the new fantasy game from DraftKings. Use code RWPICKS for $50 in Pick6 credits with a $5